In your book, there is a chapter on language X.
I am very certain that the Indus Valley languages survived till about 1,000 years back.
Who decides that this is the standard one and this is the inferior or say the subordinate version of that language?
You actually happy about Narendra Modi for the first time in your life?
It was really revealing to read that a lot of North Indian languages have Dravidian substratum.
50% Dravidian blood everywhere. It's uniform. I don't think that Ashoka and Buddha were trying to speak to the people. They were trying to speak to the elites of all of India.
In the process of standardization, the elites have been exploited by all modern Indian languages. So we should go to English instead.
For me, the biggest problem of English in India is
So I'm Nikhil and we have Karandeep Singh Sir with us. And this is our new series that we started a couple of months ago called Akhyan Diaries, where we conduct podcasts and such discussions with scholars and authors. We have had one discussion in the past with Sam Darlington. We also had last month only discussion with Anirudh Kanisetti on Chola Empire. And today we have the third in the series with Dr. Peggy Mohan. And before introducing her, let me give you a little bit of a background first. That India, as everybody knows, has a lot of languages. Even some people call it a linguistic civilization. We have not only a lot of languages, but also a lot of linguists since the ancient time. Starting from Yaska's Nirupta and Panini's Ashtadhyayi, we have a tradition of a lot of people. Even in colonial times, the tradition started with William Jones and continued. And in the post-independence era also, we have many eminent scholars, including in the series, we have Dr. Peggy Mohan with us today. So I will introduce her first. She was born in Trinidad in West Indies. She has done her course in Trinidad only, her bachelor's in linguistics and then PhD from University of Michigan. She has taught at a variety of places, including Harvard University, Washington, DC, in JNU, in Ashoka University, and also in Jamia Millia, I think a course on mass communication. She is author of two wonderful books we have here today.
three more actually.
Three more are upcoming.
No, before.
Before these two, there are three more. Oh, I was aware of these two books only.
Different publisher.
Okay. Of which the latest one that came just a few months ago is a Father Tongue and Motherland. It is a very interesting book, and that is the occasion because of which we have her here today. I would like to tell one thing though, that when I opened both the books, I initially used to think that linguistics is a very technical, pedantic, complex subject. I had read some books on it before, but her books are written in so lucid and interesting manner that while reading them, it appears as if it is a story of a detective, a jasusi katha. You open layers by layers and then evidence by evidence, it becomes very dramatic. So it is very easy read, and I would recommend most of you, all of you, to read most of these books as far as possible. And before we start again, I have a small token to give to her as a token of gift appreciation, everything. So the format will be like this for first few minutes, maybe an hour or so. Both Karan sir and I will have conversation with Dr. Mohan. We'll have a lot of questions. The questions are divided into largely three parts, three segments. The first set of questions are a little bit theoretical. The second set of questions are more of historical, and third would be regarding some contemporary issues. Once that is done, then we'll have floor open to all of you to ask the questions.
Okay.
So my first question is, it may be a little silly question. I speak three languages. Some of my friends speak 4 or 5 languages. But how many languages it takes to become a linguist?
Do you know that a lot of people in Harvard, like Noam Chomsky, we used to make fun of them when we were students. They used to say, take any language, for example, English. There were quite a lot of American linguists who only knew English. And they just went deeper and deeper into English to look at things you never think of as grammar. He told me that the sun rises in the east. Correct. He told me that the sun rose in the east. Both correct. He told me that the sun rose in the west is a theoretically correct sentence because he's just telling me what he said. He told me that the sun rises in the west. You can't say that because you're coming into contact with a truth. You can't use the present tense because you're making a general statement. You never would think of that as part of grammar of a language, that you can say, he told me that the sun rose in the west. I'm merely telling you what he said. He told me that the sun rises in the west is grammatically wrong because you can't use the present tense because you're endorsing the statement. These are the kind of things we never thought about as being part of language. So there are people who can be linguists who only look at English.
Okay.
And then there are people like me who, I'm not the kind like many of you who can throw off 5 languages in the same sentence. People think I can, but I don't think I can. But I'm not uncomfortable with a lot of languages. I think I'm a little unusual that way. Like if I get something from China, I will really look at the characters and see this is not matching. This is a mistake. I don't know the language, but I'll still dig into it like that. I think it's not about being a linguist.
Okay. So let me go to the very basic question than that. When William Jones in 1780 started to reconstruct the whole thing, his main focus was finding out root words. He was focusing on the lexicon of a language, the vocabulary. A lot of people confuse the language for vocabulary. We also have some people who focus on script as the main identity of a language. But while reading your book, I got an idea that script is not necessarily a language. Vocabulary can also keep changing like a flesh of a body.
Nouns much more than verbs.
Yes.
Like whenever you see new words coming into Urdu or Malayalam or Hindi even, they tend to be nouns.
Then what is the language? Then what is the language?
What is a language? It's a complicated thing to answer, but I'm sure some of you, if you've looked at my book, you kind of know. In the old days, when the British were here, they got very, very excited at the thought that they found similarities between Sanskrit and then, of course, into Hindi and with Persian, Old Persian, European languages. So they were excited at the words because the words are the things you see first. Words are very important because that's when I listen to Kannada, I don't understand that the grammar is similar to the grammar of Hindi in some ways or similar to the grammar of Bengali in some ways or Dakhini. I hear the words. And the words are what are cueing me. That's the first thing you listen to. But in fact, if you look, words are so transferable. What's not transferable, which tells you a lot more about the history of the language, is the inner structure, the grammar. What does a language have? Like if you're an Indian language, you like nouns. European languages are not so into nouns. Okay, that's at a very basic level. We would rather say the advent of Diwali or because Diwali is coming. Advent will be a noun which will summarize the entire word. And it comes into Indian English because Indian English has picked up some of these features. But so in a way, I find that the grammar tells me quite a lot more about the history of the language. You can see big language families of India, not in terms of words, they're in terms of a grammatical structure. East of Allahabad, you start getting Asiatic features. West of Allahabad, you get features that go all the way back to the first migration out of Africa. Every time you say main ne, khana khaya, it's ne. Has come through the filtering system of Prakrits, but it is not from Prakrit. It is older. So these allow me to trace history. Wow, we have something called ne. This goes all the way to the Australian Aboriginals. They have it too. They also have like us. The Andaman Islanders have something similar to the name. Also, theirs is less affected than ours because it's in all the tenses. We only have it in the past tense in Hindi. So suddenly you can look at a grammatical thing, and if you're studying it, I'm not listening to them and trying to talk to them, but studying it, you can see into history through the grammar better than you can through the words, because the words can change. In fact, quite a lot of other things can change too. I mean, languages like Hindi, Punjabi, Sindhi, Marathi could pick up gender. Dakhini could pick up gender. Bengalis can't pick up gender when they come to Delhi. So obviously, some things can happen, but grammar is I find grammar is what I call the maternal layer. The mother who keeps you in her uterus and who feeds you after you're born, and the father, which sperm donor, gives you words. And so you get this kind of fusion of an older maternal layer of structure in a language. When we think the mother's layer is telling us a lot about our history and our basic structure, the men's layer, the words, the male migrants, are telling us quite a bit about the political changes and informations in this country that occurred. You know, for example, that suddenly this part of the Deccan aligned with the North in a way, or that there was a big gap somewhere around Allahabad, and the people on the other side had a different kind of grammar. But, for example, you begin to find that words connect us in funny ways, which go above and beyond the grammar. That Kannada is a South Indian language, but I can hear some Sanskrit words. Malayalam, I can hear some Sanskrit words. So both the layers are helping me. The vocabulary layer is at a superficial level, but for studying, it's the inner layer that tells me much more about the actual history. That was long.
My question is, initial models that we're talking about the languages, they were mainly one parent model, like the family system that was talked by William Jones and various other historical linguistics. They were talking about how one language had many avatars over a period of time. But according to your book and your literature, you have always talked about two parent model. Okay. So how is it different from the one parent model that was talked by the previous historical linguistics? And just to give the audience a brief idea about what you're going to explain, I would like you to explain what is Pidgin and Creole to them so that it becomes easy for them to grasp.
Remind me, because I'm an old person, I'm going to forget what you just asked. The one parent model, remember there was a time when people believed that, and we still do, your surname is your father's line. And you didn't think too much about the mother's line, although you knew that you did look like her. So obviously there's some contribution from her. So they were not, and they had no idea that they could have a separate kind of contribution. I have an advantage that I grew up in a place, the West Indies, where these things that had happened in India over 1,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, had happened much more recently in full view of the public. We could see it happening during slave times, where African languages, which were the maternal layer, and vocabulary coming in from the not exactly paternal layer. There was not that kind of mixing. Just there was some. But the disruptors, the Europeans who brought the Africans and put them there forever, they were not going back. That was an important point, that they had made a permanent change in their lives. So you have the people who come in and make the permanent change leave their vocabulary for some reason. And the people who have been changed but have not had the power to influence the situation, they often tend to have an influence. But all our lives as children, we were told we're just speaking bad English. Why are we saying, I'll give you an example. It's in Pidgins and creoles. I come to Pusa Road today. What tense is that? I come to Pusa Road today. It's actually the past tense because in African languages, West African languages, any verb without a tense marker is past. It's the opposite of English. If you want to say, I come into, I does come every day. I come in today, but I come to Pusa Road means I came. I run to school today. I ran. These were considered mistakes. Whereas when I went to college, we first discovered that they're not mistakes. They are legacy of a very African grammatical separation and how we see time. And I still hear people sometimes saying these things from the Caribbean when they say, well, yeah, that's the same sort of thing. I run, I go to school today, which means that's not, I'm not there now. I went and I came back home. I'm not in school. So this notion has come from the maternal layer. So we didn't have a way of, so we knew it from creoles that we had two layers. Nobody believed us because we are jungle bunnies in the Caribbean, and what do we know anyway? Europeans were sitting doing their Latin and their Sanskrit. But then came in the last 10 years, yes, it's 10 years, 2017, the first big paper came out, genetics. And genetics started telling us, yeah, actually, do you know that except for the first migration into India 70,000 years ago, 65,000, they left Africa 70,000 years ago. They had men and women because they weren't migrants. They were just spreading out. But almost, essentially all the migrants after that were men. And they met Indian women who were already here. I think there's just one tribe, one group in the Northeast that actually brought a reasonable number of women. And that is in Meghalaya. That basically, so you know that the words tracing back to the men who came and the grammar is tracing back to the women who they met here. So you actually found a genetic separation between the genders. So we had not previously thought of it as men and women. We had just thought of the poorer group, the slaves, African and, well, all African, and white people from Europe who came and enslaved them and brought them there. But suddenly we start seeing that there's a link to women. And I realized that even in the West Indies, there was no such thing as new languages coming if there were not women, because men don't make languages if they go temporarily anywhere. Now, you asked the question, what is a pidgin and a creole? What is a pidgin? What is a creole? They sound identical. I can't tell them apart just hearing them. If I hear a Nigerian speak, I will just think, oh, he seems to be from my island in the Caribbean. But there's a difference. First, you notice that pidgins never seem to erase the local languages around them, and the creoles do. There's a gender difference. Again, when men go temporarily on migration, don't change their identities, don't have new children and families, but they go back home after. While they are out, they need to speak something. And they learn trade languages on ships or in trading centers and so. Very similar processes happen when women travel and these women have children and never go back. So since there's a permanent change, you get a new language coming up, which is taking in the new words from whoever has come and disrupted them and taken them there. And it's, yeah, whereabouts I. So it's taken in these new words, but since there's no going back and women have children, men don't. Men don't have children because if they have children with somebody else, those are her children. She brings them up in terms of a language. If the man is going back, if he had a child, that child is no longer really his. He's not ethnically his, not going to speak his language. So the difference between Pidgins and creoles is that mothers and their children tend to make the creoles when they are there permanently. Pidgins tend to be men and on temporary migrations. You go on a ship, you come back.
So, ma'am, a follow-up question on that. So, you said that only males migrate largely. So, how come a minority male who migrated to different places, they could create a language that became the lingua franca, that became the language of masses? Was the linguistic identity of the people living there not that important? Was there no resistance?
We can even think of the Aryan migration, for example.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. All right, let's see. What are the kind of men who migrate? Why do men migrate, first of all? There's something about a society not needing the second son. I'm saying for human terms. The older son inherits the property. What does the second son do? He's a spare. So there has a tendency for men to be migrating and moving out, not only because they're the second son, but the success of the society has overpopulated the place. Like when China cut all its forests and grew so much rice, suddenly the population went really huge and they started spreading into Southeast Asia, and then some of them even spread here 4,000 years back and brought their rice. So that's how we know, because from the rice genetics and the human genetics. So men do migrate, not because the society is in trouble, but because it's doing too well. And you notice even now the migrations out of India, Indians who are being caught, except for a few families in Canada. And so they tend to be young men. They're not old men, they're not children, they're not women. There's a certain thing to do. Young men are in the crosshairs for a lot of things. They're also the maximum number of people who shoot people dead on campuses. Have you ever seen a woman or a child or an old person shooting up neighborhood? No. So something, maybe it's a similar impulse to migrate, to be unsatisfied with the way things are. So men have always been migrating. How have they had power? Maybe they haven't always had power. Maybe some did not. We get to know of the ones who did. Like we say the Vedic people came approximately 3,700 years ago. Why only then? They may have been coming before. They may have been coming later. Some of them apparently are not technically Vedic Arya because they were what's called Vratyas. There are various tribes from that area. So when you see a lot of Indians with steppe ancestry, you don't know that it's Vedic. It could be another tribe that came from that area. We didn't think about it very much. But by and large, they manage. It doesn't happen straight away. Like if we know from what we know of the Vedic people, they took a good 500-700 years to get their act together, because we don't know much about what they were like when they came. We only know what happened during the Kuru dynasty when they actually collected the Rig Veda and made the Samhitas. But before that, it was around. We just didn't know about it. And we can't trace it because there's nothing written. And there's no other way to, we're speculating. So they took that long. Why? Because they were fighting each other, not only fighting locals. And they were playing games that align with the locals, fight another Vedic tribe. In fact, the real spread across North India started when the Vedic people stopped fighting each other. And then they made a pact, and then they collected the Rig Veda in order to use it to get locals on board who would be the kings and the warriors. And so you have these Brahmins advising them, and they have all these warriors, and we do all this Shrauta stuff so that they are aligned with us. And so the point is that it took that long. The British, when they came here, initially were not that great. They hated it. They were not good. They felt very outclassed. And they would love to run away from their areas and get into the Mughal courts and or marry people here, have better food, better weather than they'd ever seen. It's just that at the second time when they got consolidated. So the idea that these people came and ekdam se conquer the place, it didn't happen like that. It was slow. And usually I think the second attempt is the attempt that worked when they had enough people to when they basically had a sense of how they related to this place. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Ma'am, then see, a language has multiple versions. Okay, so but it is usually seen that some version of that language is taken to be the standard version. Okay, it has a hierarchy over other versions. Who decides that? Okay, this is the standard version. Say from my area where I come from, say Awadhi, Braj, Bhojpuri. They are considered to be the dialects of Khadi Boli. And
It's not, but politically, yes, it is. Yeah.
so who decides that this is the standard one and this is the inferior or say the subordinate version of that language?
In fact, that's a very good example because when you think about Awadhi and Braj, they were more developed than Hindi in terms of having a literature earlier. But Hindi, there was no doubt that Hindi, it wasn't called Hindi then, it was called Dehlavi. You can call it Kariboli. A lot of people smile when we call it that. Muslims smile because basically it was a Dehlavi dialect. And that gives you your answer straight away. Where was it from?
Delhi.
The capital city. So if it was very small and local, how did you decide which language is going to be the language of power? Usually the simplest answer is it's always a major city, center of commerce, center of the economy, and best of all, a capital city. So if you look at all the places in India, well, like Tamil is so varied, but which is the Tamil of modern journalism? Think about that. It's not farmers' language in North Arcot, no. And if you look at, then there are places like Kerala and Maharashtra where the process is still happening. It's not complete. There are parts of Maharashtra where the language pulls with Kannada in terms of its grammar. But the schooling system tells you that this is the language, standard language. And that standard language, so the major center of power decides, the schooling system nowadays pulls people together, and then not literature, but journalism decides that this is like modern Arabic. For a long time, written Arabic was Quranic Arabic, Al-Fusha. But you can't do a United Nations speech in that. So they went to journalistic Arabic. Okay, what kind of journalistic Arabic? From Egypt, the majority country. So suddenly, Egypt, the most long intellectual tradition, large population, etc., becomes the standard Arabic for journalism.
So I have a follow-up question on this. Is it primarily and only the political center
What is this?
in deciding what is the standard version of a language? Is it the location of the political capital that matters alone, or in case of India, it is also caste system?
Whatever's more important, I would be inclined to say political or not so much that, also economic. And they tend to come together in the idea of a capital city because the politics, it's a center of market. Market is very important. Like when you think, like, what are the kinds of Punjabi which are suddenly vying to be the Punjabi? There was no such thing as Punjabi, by the way, 40 years back. You spoke like you were from Amritsar. You spoke like you were from Patiala. You didn't have a Punjabi. Now you do. And it is based on the cities. And I don't know which one in particular, because maybe it's not so clear cut there. They don't have a Delhi, they don't have a Calcutta, they don't have a
One dominant city.
huh?
One dominant city.
One so big. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but what is Gujarati? Gujarati is going to be linked to a city. Which city?
Ahmedabad.
Or are they that different? Does it matter? Is it like Chinese that you can write in one way, but you'll also pronounce it a little bit differently, and that doesn't matter? These are issues, but it is a city culture.
Okay. Ma'am, let us move to the second part now, the historical aspects of the language development. My first question is regarding the Indus Valley language. Now, we all know that the script is undeciphered so far. It's been more than 100 years. And a lot of people are pulling their hairs about how to decode it. Is it a Dravidian language? Is it representing some Sanskrit version? Is it some tribal Gondi language or something? Recently, we had even the conference in Delhi with 20 papers published and different.
Invited now. Wow, something different to say.
So, in your book, there is a chapter on language X.
Yeah.
So this language X is unknown language, which is now a Harappan language, possibly. And what you have done very interestingly is try to bypass the question of script altogether. Script is not decodable right now, so let us not go into script. Still try to reconstruct the Harappan language or languages. So how did you do it? And
okay, I never believed that it was necessary that was even a writing system. They're very tiny seals. So what would you put on a seal? You might not need to put anything that could be a sentence with a subject and an object and a story. It's quite possible it's the name of the person who has merchandise to sell. It could be like a QR code, which is communication for sure. But is it language? Would you want to call it language? Is a Dhobi mark language? So we don't know. We have no way without a Rosetta Stone of cracking it. I have friends who try and they get something, but nowhere near cracking what the code was. But so I did something different. I basically looked at the entire Northwest Indus Valley area, compared the languages, and found they extended as far as Allahabad and down into Maharashtra. And that there were languages which were not related to this family, which are full of Prakrit words, still up in the mountains. And could we look at them? Oh, they have the same features in a purer form. Hello, not Sanskrit features. This ne thing is there in all the tenses, not just the past tense. And you don't say main ne khana khaya. Khaya will have another marker which goes with the main, and it will have the marker going with the khana. Everything is marked, super marked. The older languages were much more detailed than our modern ones. And then I look at the Andamans, that's how it's done. Look at Australian Aborigines, that's how it's done. Look at the Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh tribal languages. A little different, but mostly yes. And you suddenly feel the modern languages have preserved something that is can tell us a lot about a past by looking at the things that are not from Sanskrit. So you don't look at the words. The words have come from the Prakrits. Forget the words. You cannot get the words of the Indus Valley languages, but you can get the skeleton. You can get the grammar. You can get the sounds. Why is it that, okay, let's take Punjabi. Why does Punjabi say khana instead of khana? That's a Dravidian Sandhi rule. It's not Sanskrit rule. Khana, because the na in between two vowels becomes arna. Kala, sardinal. These are all very old sounds which don't belong in Sanskrit. Even na not supposed to come except with an R, a R sound, or turned. But mani, Sh is not supposed to come without a r somewhere, but sh. You get to know which are the old words, you know. So you look at these, you see Punjabi does not have a way of Punjabi, not modern Delhi Punjabi, does not pronounce bh, Bharatiya, Bharatiya, right? Why? It avoids bh because it's a Dravidian based substratum. Neither can Sindhis, by the way. They do something else where they like, if you wanted to pronounce a duh, you pronounce it a duh. It becomes a duh. But then what does duh become? Have you heard of some politician by the name of Advani? Advani? The sound is not some strange thing out of nowhere. It's an avoidance of saying duh. So these are Dravidian features. So you get a sense looking at some of these structures in the language. There's some things I can't answer, for example, like everybody here knows some Hindi. The difference between hua and ho gaya, it's not a tense difference. It is something different. Chinese has the same thing. Russian has the same thing. Sanskrit doesn't have it. It's basically that you khana kha liya, pasara khana nahi khaya. No, you can't say kha liya, but pasara nahi. Once you say kha liya, it is all. It is about completedness. This is an Asian concept. This is not a Sanskrit concept. So you look past the Sanskrit things in the language and you begin to see they all have this and they're all in the Indus Valley area. What do I make of it? So I'm not complete, but there's some things like the hua and hogia that I can't put my head on a block because the one or two languages in the mountains don't have it.
So the hypothesis is that these are the features that have somehow managed to survive since the Indus Valley area.
That particular one I'm not certain of because, as I said, there's one language in the Karakorams that doesn't have it. Two. But there are a lot of other features, this ne thing, as I said, which is just in the whole Indus Valley shadow. Nowhere else in it. Even Dakhini, which is so similar to Urdu, doesn't have it. Like I recite my joke from my book, where this North Indian guy goes to Hyderabad and he meets a Muslim guy there and he says, Aapne namaz padhi? This Hyderabadi is shocked. Padhi? Like, don't you know you're speaking to a man? How can you say to me, Aapne namaz padhi? You're supposed to say, Aap namaz padhe. No, ne. The namaz is not important. The man is it. So he looks at the guy and he says, Tu padhi ki nahi ke, aapun to pad liya. So this is out of the Indus Valley shadow. No more ne. It's gone. Southern Maharashtra, it's gone. So you can see straight away that this is the most Indus Valley thing that we have in our languages. It ends somewhere around the last line of states in Maharashtra.
So I have one question on the same thing. If lot of modern vernaculars today have these features which are not coming from Sanskrit, when we look at the map of India, linguistic map of India, we show north of Narmada is mostly Indo-Aryan speaking belt, etc. Do you still believe in that linguistic map?
I put it in inverted commas because it depends on the purpose. If I want to say the vocabulary is similar, I will say, yeah, Indo-Aryan. And I sometimes use the term, but I often put it in inverted commas because we are not only Indo-Aryan, we are also that other thing that goes back 65,000 years to the first Indians. It's not lost.
It was really revealing to read that a lot of North Indian languages have a Dravidian substratum of some sort.
Not only the languages. In fact, the genetic studies in Pakistan, and Hello, not just in the plains, talking about in the highest mountains where people are thought to be, they're speaking isolate, related to nothing on earth, 50% Dravidian blood everywhere. It's uniform as much as there is in South India. In South India is also only 50% Dravidian, because if there were men also going south, they married somebody who was not. So the uniformity of Dravidian genetics across from the northwest going down to the south is something we need to think about. I'm not surprised, because I believe that even the most isolated tribe, like the Burusho in the Karakorams, if they came, like all other migrants to this area, they were men. They had to marry somebody. And I thought they were wonderful to study, because imagine they came 1,000 years ago and Indus Valley languages were still being sort of spoken. Who are the women they would find to marry? Not princesses. They would be finding ordinary women who probably spoke. Wow, what a repository of 1,000 years ago, up in the mountains where there's no further impact of Urdu and so to confuse them. So if they should have 50% Dravidian blood, because these women were Dravidian.
Interesting.
All of us, by the way, pretty much.
So I would like to now change it a little bit to a new topic, that in our history books, we generally study in the textbooks written 30, 40, 50 years ago, that Sanskrit was the language of the ritual specialists, exclusive elites in the past. But Prakrit, various Prakrits, Pali, etc., were languages which were used by Gautam Buddha, by Mahavir, by Ashoka, primarily because they wanted to speak to common people. So, because they wanted the message to reach the masses, they chose not Sanskrit but these languages. But your chapter in the book has altered that perspective altogether. That Prakrit is as much elite
Yes,
as Sanskrit.
elite.
It is not common people's language.
You look at Prakrit grammar, or Pali or Ardha Magadhi, you really will not find at the grammatical level any difference from Prakrit. There's 3 genders, 8 karaks. I mean, how much more Sanskrit can you get than that? Sandhi rules, everything, just slight differences in words. I don't think that Ashoka and Buddha were trying to speak to the people. They were trying to speak to the elites of all of India. In fact, the Prakrits spoken like Magadhan Prakrit by Ashoka, what blew my mind, and one of my students pointed this out to me. I was kind of used to it. I said, yeah, it's like all the Prakrits. He said, it shouldn't be. If he's from Magadha, what is Magadhan about Magadhan Prakrit? And for a minute, I dodged him. And the next class I came, I said, you're absolutely right. I need to think about this. And the answer was that Prakrit was an elite thing across the landmass, and that Ashoka was reaching out through his Prakrit, the way he wrote in his inscriptions. Buddha, they had actually gone and refined the language back to make sure that it did not look strange to the rest of India and to the elites. They're not concerned with the masses. The Magadhan area, the people were speaking something quite different. Not like, anybody here knows some Bengali? Bengali, Odia, Assamese. These are languages where you can't say, let's see, 2 dogs. Dugo kukur, duta kukur, right? Where's that in Magadhan Prakrit? It should be there. But his very first inscription has a bunch of things to do with counting animals, and it's not there. And you see that from the earliest times in the Magadhan area, the elites who knew Prakrit, Pali, Ardha Magadhi, and I don't know if the Ajivikas had a language. They didn't write anything, so we don't know. But there were no Magadhan features in the Magadhan Prakrit. It was just another Prakrit of India. So clearly that it was a Kshatriya language. The Prakrit and the kind of people who spoke those as opposed to Sanskrit, they were the Kshatriyas. And the Brahmins knew Sanskrit, but on a daily basis, they spoke Prakrits. And I suspect other people, I suspect they also went and bought their sabzi in local languages. Right? So, and that is why you get leakage from one type of language into the other. This Ne thing coming in, for example. This Ne thing is in Magadhan Prakrit. It's not there in any of the other Magadhan language. We are out of the Indus Valley zone, but Magadhan Prakrit has it. Weird. You know, it's leaked in from Indus Valley times. So basically, if you consider, I'm simplifying, Brahmins knew Sanskrit, but Sanskrit was changing. Everybody elite spoke Prakrit. Then there's a huge gap to the rest of the people. And those are the languages that shape the modern languages, not the Prakrit. Only the Prakrits gave the vocabulary in the north, not in Kerala. In Kerala, the Sanskrit came from a different group.
Manipravala.
Yeah, it came because of literary reasons, whereas this was not literary. This was English, basically.
So I want to probe it a little bit deeper. In Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, we have a sanket, we have a norm that if a man is talking to other man, it would be generally in Sanskrit. But if you want to talk to a person of lower class or a woman in house, it would be in Prakrit. So we study in our text. Even Kalidas follows that model.
Yeah, but how low are you going then? And also, and Kalidas, no Sanskrit scholar will agree that he was no Amir Khusro. Amir Khusro used his ears and he never went away from what people actually said. People keep saying that it's possible that Kalidasa just used all the stereotypes. If you want to make fun of how a Malayali speaks in English or Hindi, you know how to do it. And that's basically what he was doing for Shakuntala. That he said all the possible things she could get wrong in her Sandhi rules, and he put them in there. And it's just unlikely that it would be such a neat match with all his prejudices.
So that brings me to the medieval period of India, say 10th to 12th century. So there was rise of a lot of vernacular languages. Now there are many theories related to it, saying that some say that it's the collapse of Brahmin Kshatriya alliances or invasion of Turks. Some basically say that the regional religious regions like Bhakti movement, and some say that certain regional states actually promoted this vernacular languages. But you have a different stance on it. You say that these languages do have a long prehistory. So why suddenly in 10th to 12th century this languages rose up?
I have no evidence that there was anything sudden about these languages coming up. From the look of it, from the way they blended new Prakrit vocabulary with older languages, I'm seeing a English sort of thing going on. Yes, these things can happen a little faster when politically or economically the situation has changed. But we don't know how long has English been around. I've been hearing things like English before you were born, but not so prominent as you're getting now, because obviously certain other things are happening that a lot of people are saying, why should we know English? And we want to talk about these things so we can mix them. So obviously there's something spurring the need to mix languages. But what was important in the 11th century, 12th century, you have to be familiar with a evolutionary theory called punctuated equilibrium, which basically means that the world does not develop. It stays stable, and bad things are happening, get rid of them. Too many bad things are happening, and then we go here and we carry on. Basically, we have static plateaus with huge rock formations. To get to the next level, we either go extinct or go up. So what that means is that if things are going wrong and going wrong for a long period of time, there is no reaction. We think maybe nothing is going to change, maybe nothing is happening because the system craves stability, craves a plateau. So you may be here and things are about to go terribly wrong. You will not know it until suddenly upheavals are happening. And those upheavals, if you had really thought about it, there was a reason brewing for a long time. Like a wave doesn't come up on the surface until it has done quite a lot of work below the water. So you have this sort of thing happening. And from what we can see, the entire Prakrit kingdoms, the end of Buddhism, something was quite brittle and decayed in the whole Indian polity. And it keeps going. I mean, it's like an Alzheimer patient. You can keep talking to them. Their brain is basically nothing. I mean, it's shrunken like anything. And then at some point you realize this person can't do it. And at some point you realize that what it takes to unseat a system is mysterious. When is that moment when things start to happen? So even before the Central Asians came in, the sultanates, we had Sufis in and we have Bhakti people in doing amazing counter government behavior that we wouldn't even do nowadays. So when the Sufis had been around for about 100 years, that was when the sultanates came in. And they came into a situation that was ripe for overthrows. And it was very easy for them to overthrow the Prakrit-based rulers. And the first thing they did is what the British did when they came to India. British don't like Persian, throw it out, teach everybody English, make Hindi different from Urdu. And they said, they don't like Prakrit, throw it out. You are speaking Bengali, you have lovely ballads, come into my court and tell us all your new poetry. And suddenly they're giving patronage to these languages and giving them importance, and whichever ones go first become the standards.
Taking this forward, what you are trying to say in a way is that these modern vernaculars have not displaced Sanskrit in ancient India. They have displaced Pali and Prakrit.
Well, Sanskrit was basically a museum piece for a very long time. Any language which is not allowed to change and it's preserved. I mean, if you've ever been to Tiananmen Square, you will find a sleeping Mao, a little bit cool if you touched him, lying there forever. He's not alive. I have a definition of alive. Having a body lying there is not life. Having language in a book is not life. If no one ever speaks that language, if no child talks baby talk in that language is a dead language.
So, ma'am, you just talked about Hindi-Urdu thing. I have a question about that. So, some people believe that this Hindi-Urdu was the same language but with a different script. They have a popular story that it was done by some John Gilchrist in some Fort William in 1800, that he just, in order to divide and rule India, he just said that Hindi and Urdu was different. It was altogether the same. People did not differentiate it between Hindi and Urdu. It was the common language. But you have a different stance that they were always a different language.
What happened was a single language, which is Dehlavi. And before the 1700s, it was written, okay, there was no Devanagari at the time. It existed, but was not used in Hindi, was not used in Marathi, was not used in Nepali. We had other language. We had Gayatri, Mahajani, Moriya. These were the scripts that were used. The British, because they loved Sanskrit so much, said, hey, we got this separate thing from Urdu. Why don't you use Devanagari? A bunch of people somewhere in Bihar started promoting it and saying, yeah, we're going to use Devanagari, we're not going to use our Kathi. As a child, I learned Kathi because I didn't live in India. We knew about it. It's not known much in India anymore. So at some point, the Brits wanted to separate the two. And you can't separate a language which hasn't got other reasons to want to separate. Urdu got its maximum amount of Persian words in the 1700s. That's pretty late. These people have been around in India from 1200 something, right? 1205 or something. And 1700, you start getting all this intense, not so intense. It's with Ghalib that you started seeing a lot of infusion of Persian words. And guess who were around giving people trouble then? The Brits. It was under the threat of death of a whole way of life that the language started basically going into parda. And similarly, the British were not the only ones who were keen to put not Prakrit, but Tatsama Sanskrit into Hindi. So when you do something like that and you put Tatsama Sanskrit, you're intruding in a way that it's like basically doing CRISPR genes and creating a new life form, because Hindi had never had Sanskrit before, it had Prakrit. So you have these two going their separate ways. Once you are born, you're not going to have the same life story. Your life story begins to be different, but doesn't matter how different you look, how differently you dress, how differently you talk, you cannot be told apart on a genetic test. The day Hindi or Urdu want to donate vocabulary to each other, they can do it. I've heard it done. I've heard Urdu with Hindi technical vocabulary. It sounds okay. I remember having to speak in Urdu at a talk like this, and I wanted the word for lipi. I didn't want to say khatati. It sounded a bit much. And it was okay. Everybody knew what was lipi. So we could do a kind of organ transplants. There will be some pain because it's an incision and stitching to put a new kidney into this one and that. But it happens. There's no tissue rejection. If I did it from Bengali into Hindi, people do that too. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But with Urdu and Hindi, they're identical twins. Genetically, there will be never a problem.
Okay, very interesting metaphors. So let me come to the third segment now.
Oh, okay.
The contemporary issues of languages.
Yeah.
We'll discuss three of them. The first one is the present government is trying to promote Hindi in official communication much more, with the objective that English is not our language. It is a colonial legacy and it has to be replaced with Indian language, that is Hindi. Now, my query is because what you have said that the continuation or the persistence of English is not because of necessarily only colonial legacy, it is because of our own elitist past. That we always had some elite language like this.
We do.
So
Persian, Sanskrit, Prakrits, yeah.
So how would it go further? Like, will Hindi become elite language now?
I don't know if it's Hindi. I don't know. You're asking me. I am trying to do this right now because my book I'm writing now is trying to project the future. There are many possible futures. So I'm looking around at two countries in particular which have implications for us because they're big enough and vast enough. One is China, which I've been looking at a lot. The other is the old Soviet Union. How did they handle their diversity? Firstly, diversity is not a comfortable situation. You discover it straight away in the IAS world. You need officers speak. There will be a push for a single language. The government has its own reasons. The government is So those reasons will not suit a lot of people in India. But you know, the only time I ever felt a little bit happy with Narendra Modi, and that takes a lot for me to be happy with this man, is when I heard his speech in SEO. Yeah. He got there and he started speaking, no teleprompter, he was reading. And apart from some of the things he said in the beginning, I was quite happy that Xi Jinping was speaking in Mandarin, Putin was speaking in Russian, and Modi was speaking in an Indian language. And I said to myself, what is happening to you? You actually happy about Narendra Modi for the first time in your life? Not because I thought he should push this language onto all of India, but I suddenly realized, you know, we suddenly are ditching the reserve currency. Hello, English is the reserve currency. We are going multipolar. And I felt a little bit happy about that. Now, how will it work? I don't know. That's what I'm working on right now. Written is very easy. I use AI all the time for translation. And I'm not talking about within India. I'm talking about with China. It can be done, and I know where the problems are. We can do it. The problem is only this: the spoken quasi-literary language. We don't know where that will go. But my suspicion is that something is going to change, maybe not immediately. So my latest idea is that India is a process. You cannot have any forward movement without all the languages of India, major ones, the written ones, being involved. You cannot have a situation where India has firing on all cylinders. You know the metaphor. Yeah, your car, 2, 3 cylinders are not running, and you're trying to race the Chinese juggernaut. No, you can't do it. You need all of it. That's why we need to think about non-English. So it's very easy to use AI to communicate. Somebody types in Oriya, it goes through the grid. And I'm actually proposing we need a South Asian grid. Bangladesh, Nepal, and not all the languages. Obviously, not some of the small tribal languages. All of Pakistan, all of Sri Lanka. So simply, whatever you type is harvested into the grid in AI and available to anyone who wants it in their language. You may say English. Someone else might say, I want it in Kannada. And it'll come because the going through AI from Hindi to Kannada is nothing. If you can do it with English, it will take 1/10 the effort to go from Hindi because the words are even lined up in perfect condition. We have to go through a phase of that. You know, it's my metaphor that I just used is, you know, if you're climbing Mount Everest, you need a certain small amount of time in base camp before you go for the summit. You don't walk straight to the summit. You need to acclimatize to the altitude at base camp level before you make that final summit push. And we need some time for all our children at base camp, not base camp, summit camp, just before. At that level at which some people don't even need oxygen, but the next one you do. So that we don't know how it's going to end. We just need to know we need to get everyone to the summit camp. Once you're at the summit camp, how will India play out? Now, so I should throw some crazy ideas your way. Narendra Modi is not a Hindi speaker, he's a Gujarati speaker. I'm not a Hindi speaker, I'm a Bhojpuri speaker. When I was walking around in a tribal village doing research in Karnataka, I thought I would never be able to speak to anybody. My students would have to help me. The guy I was going to interview came up to me and spoke to me in Dakhini, and I understood every single word he said. Something is connected in India, but we don't perceive it as such because our notion of what is Hindi is this thing that the government puts out that's full of Sanskrit words, which have to be there. You cannot say certain things without technical words. And the beauty of Shuddh Hindi, I had never said this until this year, is that you can say anything in it that you can say in English. It's not so with Urdu at the moment. Urdu does transformations, puts things better, more Indian, but it doesn't match the translation grid. Shuddh Hindi, Shadhu Bhasha in Bengali, all of it, Marathi, they match a translation grid. That's so. What kind of language will we have this discussion in 50 years from now? I don't know. I suspect one needs to see what the Russians managed to achieve for some time. They got a lot more diversity preserved. The Chinese did not. The Chinese have absorbed. To a Chinese, Punjabi and Hindi is just the same thing. They just come under the same grid, the same Chinese characters. You want to say it khana and I will say khana. Theek hai. What is the problem? Chinese will do that. Which way are we going, or is there another way? I actually have a lot of excitement about India because I believe that when all the sound and fury is over and the other countries are fought, we will still be alive. And then we will have to think, how will the world be when there's less pressure? How will the world live when the objective is not to have more weapons and ICBMs because somebody's sure to shoot at you? Would it be different? So since we are trying to plan for a very long game, when all these other people are getting old, I can't say yet where India will go. Europe does not interest me. I don't think they're going to work out. And I don't know whether they have. In their nuclear industry, do they speak in 10 languages? I don't know.
I have seen some old-time publishers saying that the book publishers, that translating from one Indian language to other Indian language is very easy. Like in Marathi, I read a lot of Kannada books, which are translated, obviously. I have read a lot of Gujarati literature in Marathi.
Where are you from in Maharashtra?
I am from Pune.
Okay.
S-
Sahat. Okay.
uh,
If you said Solapur, I would have said, well, obviously.
so it is translated, but the translation industry, the way it worked, from one Indian language to other Indian language, which is relatively easier to do. The cultural references here are not lost in translation.
Yep.
People understand them, but such books are less translated relatively. But the English to Indian languages translation is more often found and consumed.
Yeah, because so that's fine. Let it be. Then we will have some Beokufu who has time on his hands. He will do all the English for us. We don't have to ask them, they will do it. This, what you're talking about, is what is going to be needed. But how will somebody who has a question from Assam ask somebody in Kerala, what has been your experience? And it will come back, like I was telling them, I'm now writing a lot to people in China. I write differently when I know it's going through an AI translator. I don't allow any ambiguity in the way I say things because AI will mess it up. I know where they will mess it up. When I write these books, I realize that it is a problem for a translator. Too densely written, pretending almost to be literary, when in fact I should just be giving the information. Will I write differently when I have to write for an all India audience in Hindi? I think I will. I will avoid the things where AI might get it wrong.
I would like to pick up that thread of Indian languages being closer to each other. Nowadays, we see in the news a lot of clashes between different language communities. The Hindi versus Marathi in Mumbai. We have seen Hindi versus Kannada in Bangalore. What are the reasons that we have? Is it new thing? Is it becoming more intense? And how to resolve this?
These are political questions. They're not really linguistic. I suspect again, a lot of things that are wrong is because we're still operating as a shortages economy, not enough for everybody, so I must get whatever I can. I think they're political problems and they will manifest in different ways. It's like when you see Trump doing something absolutely absurd, have you considered that he may be having a convulsion and that his brain cells are firing randomly? No, you're taking him seriously. You think it is about what he is thinking. It's the same with some Hindi and Kannada having a problem in Bangalore. I can go there and I am not asking for a job there. I am not looking to live there. I don't experience the problem because the problem is at another level. It is about
Economic.
competition for jobs, I think.
These are not sharpening linguistic identities as such.
Yeah, but maybe this is a phase we're going through. As I said, that all the languages have to perhaps live together at summit camp before they can consider how do we go to the top ourselves.
So, ma'am, last question from my side. Say that's related to this vernacular languages only. So today, what we are finding is that the young generation, they're not speaking the Shuddha Bhasha. That is, they are actually drifting towards English, maybe because of the prestige issue or some other things. And so, where do we see the vernacular languages going? So, what's the future of it? Or some people believe that they are dying and maybe at some time they might not exist altogether. On the other hand, what we are seeing is the conflicts related to the language. And so, it's creating a confusion. What exactly is the future?
You have contrary pulls. You have people wanting their own languages for certain purposes, which is the metaphor I use is if you want to close the doors of your room and put a blanket around yourself and sit with your children, you don't want the outside world coming in on your languages. And yet, once you go out, you want the ease of
Communication.
English is not a strange thing. It's happened so many times in the history of this region, going back thousands of years and possibly further back than we can even fathom because we're going, if people have humans, Homo sapiens has been here for 60,000 years. We've been doing things like this. We've been mixing languages. We've been taking from more powerful people. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's a very interesting thing because it gives an impression of what the forces are. And what I like about English, and it's not only English, it'll be Marathish or Bonglish, I don't know what it would be. I think it I think we have three levels of Indian languages contact. At the deep level, which you cannot see, is the old grammatical relationships. We came from the same mother. Then comes the next one where we diverged and we don't have the same vocabulary at all. Then comes the next level, I should be going the other way, where new words are coming, which are again linking us. So the Prakrit words linked the languages before they all vanished. The English words are linking the language. When I listen to a talk in Kannada in Bangalore, I don't know everything the guy is saying, but I know where he's reached because I know what he's going to say. And two things are helping me. One is the Sanskrit words, which again are a connector at a superficial level. The other, the English words. So we have these three forces. The oldest thing, and my metaphor I use for understanding this is think of people's names in the majority community. If you meet a guy whose name is Rahul, you have no idea which part of India he's from. You'll know from the other name that maybe this is his caste, this is his region, this is this. But something at the top level, the name you call him by, is responding to a pan-Indian something. And you're getting that with the language, and the grammars and the division time when they each grew in different niches. These are other times. Suddenly, you're finding Sanskrit, of all things, and English, pulling languages together. One of my students, a Bengali student, wrote a paper on how when he doesn't know a Hindi word, he uses the Shadhu Bhasha of Bengali. And everybody knows what it means if the word does not yet exist. And the question is, are there words in Hindi that potentially exist because they exist in other Indian languages and you can use them? It's an exciting thought that you've never heard the word before, but you know what it means. So you can see why I'm so excited about this. This is a very living ecosystem.
So we can say that these mixing of the language, it's more connecting the people rather than dividing them.
Yeah.
So I think we have asked all the questions. So I'll open the floor. You can please raise your hand, wait for the mic to come, tell your name, and then you may ask anything that you want.
About languages.
Yeah, definitely.
Hello, ma'am. I am Savai from Rajasthan. My question is many in Rajasthan today's time are demanding for official recognition of Rajasthani language. But the counter argument of government and many other people is that there is no script or proper grammar for Rajasthan. So my question basically is Rajasthani is language proper or many dialects like Mewadi, Marwadi, Shekhawati, this type?
This is a lovely question. Would you call it even Hindi? I find that all the Rajasthani dialects are much more accessible from Gujarati than from Hindi? Wouldn't you say? But as to whether it has a script, you made a very important point. We've made a mistake by having a lot of scripts because that gives one more layer of opacity that you can't understand the language. You go to Nepal or you go to Maharashtra, the damn thing is in Devanagari for some administrative reason, not for any good reason. And you can understand it. You walk around in Nepal, there's no harm in using an existing language. And I think that would be used in Rajasthani languages. Rajasthani is very much a part of the spectrum. And whenever I look at the whole Indus Valley periphery, this is what part of it too. The question is, which way do you want to go? I suspect that you can't leap from a Rajasthani. You need time with these languages before you decide where you are going. You have all these camps on the way to the top of Everest. And I suspect the Rajasthani languages have not been allowed their time together to mature and decide. Because what happens then is like with me and Bhojpuri. Yeah, I'm saying Bhojpuri should be very important. And then here I am suddenly, no, I can't speak it properly. I'm slipping into Hindi at the drop of a hat on a podium. But I needed time with Bhojpuri to say, okay, this is what I can get from it. I don't know where it will go, which direction it will take, but and what is the purpose of doing this? I mean, are you going to give people more jobs? Are you planning to locate in Rajasthan certain industries that will require people to learn Rajasthani? Is there going to be migration into Rajasthan? All these are all the kinds of questions that you'd have to ask. Where is this going? I suspect that they will speak Rajasthani, Marwari, Mewari, these Shekhawati, as you said. They will speak them. Nobody's going to stop you from doing that. What will they write? I suspect that people will be writing Hindi because they learn it in school and they will find it convenient. They will initially add in quite a lot of things. And you can write it, for better imagery, you can use local languages. But eventually, if you leave people and you don't force them, they start pulling towards wherever the force of gravity is. And if they're writing for an Indian audience, they will probably start moving to a larger language. I don't know, I'm guessing. Because you see, a language is a currency. You are one economy. how are you going to reconcile many languages unless you think that you need a time together and that it is a process and that part of the process has not been completed, which is Rajasthani has been eaten up by Hindi before it got a chance to be itself. That is an important point. Yeah, somebody behind it. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Zoya. So I wanted to ask a question that by the CRISPR reference, did you mean that the tatsam swar in Hindi was added after the 17th century? And if is it so, how is it that the traditional sacred texts of India are not essentially in Tadbhav? And why is it in Tatsam?
Okay. Yeah, it is after the 17th century. These came during the time of the British. In fact, it's not even 17th century. A lot of these were roughly around the year 1900, that kind of time period when the Macaulay and all these people were around. The sacred texts were there, but they weren't. The Tatsama words were actually being used in Sanskrit itself. So that is there. Sanskrit exists, but it's not the same language. It's like saying Latin is there with all the same karaks and all the stuff as Sanskrit. It's not Italian. So, we have this a lot in a lot of parts of the world where in Europe, you have Latin words which are tatsamas, it reintroduced for medical use, but the tadbhava words are used colloquially. Like there's the verb in Spanish to hear, escuchar. It comes from auscultare in Latin. But there's a verb auscultar, which means to listen through a stethoscope. So it's interesting how two different time periods. There were no stethoscopes when the tadbhava word came into the language. But when there were stethoscopes, you went back to Latin and took the verb auscultare and you auscultate somebody's heart, but you escuchar what they're saying.
Hello, Ram. My name is Shrey, and I'm from Prayagraj, Allahabad. You mentioned Allahabad thrice, and you set it some of a benchmark, like to highlight the change. So, is it something to do with the history or something with the Prayagraj, the Allahabad? I want to know why this benchmark? Why Allahabad?
Okay, two things: history, geography, a lot of things. One is the geographic terrain. The forest lands begin. That's what I call the elephant forests. The Ashokan forests begin there. It was the area that Brahmins from the West were technically not encouraged to ever go to. They were told, you can go for short periods, but not to settle. But there were some people from the steppes, not Vedic Arya, but other migrants who did not mind going there. So they were very different and they were much more similar to the kind of tradition that gave us Buddhism and Jainism, Ajivikas. So you had a different stream of people who went there. Historically also, going back 4,000 years, there was a migration from Southeast Asia, which went all the way literally, probably, you can say Allahabad. So that's a migration not from the West, but from the East. That colored all the languages, and I make an argument that gender dropped out of the languages and a very Asian thing called numeral classification, Duta Kukur. That came at that time. So contrary migrations, a tradition of not crossing the Sangam for Brahmins, and of course Ashoka was crossing, but it somehow didn't register because he was not doing it in the same way. Buddhism seemed to happen in parallel with Brahmanism, but I don't fully understand why they never noticed each other for a good while. But that, I remember when I went to the genetics lab at Harvard and they asked me a question. They said, genetically, we can find a difference from up to Allahabad. People on one side and the other side. Can you find it in language? I said, well, yeah. from that area myself. Yeah. Gender is on the east, on the west. On the east, no gender. Past tenses are very simple and straightforward, like in the south. In the east, the west is complicated and turned around. You see, I refer to it as where the tectonic plates collided, and you get two different. This was not visible in the Prakrit times. It's when the Prakrit subsided, you started seeing that underneath it all, the common people had different histories and different things flowing into their languages. So all the languages to the east of Allahabad, if you were to think that these were Chinese or Japanese, you wouldn't just have Duta Kutkur. You have 500 different classifiers. Bengali has about 5. Bhojpuri has 1. 1 plus 0. You know, ek glass, do glass, separate glasses. But if I poured it into something, it would not be do, ekta, duta. But if I poured it into the same pot to boil them, it would not be duta. It would then become du. This is a variation concept, which is there in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, all the languages to the east, except maybe in, I don't know about Malay if it has it. But basically, it's Asian and it ends at Allahabad.
Ma'am, I'm from Maharashtra. My question is
Sorry?
Maharashtra. See, in Maharashtra, everybody is talking about Marathi is focused. But my question is, what about the dialects of Marathi, the undercurrents of Marathi? We have Ahirani, we have Vidarbhi, Solapur people have different languages.
Yeah.
So my question is, if Marathi is going to be going in a forward direction, as you say, it's going to be processed, then our identity with Marathi, will it get diminished, and how do we preserve it?
But isn't that what standardization does? What is interesting for you is that it's still happening. It is not completed in Maharashtra, whereas there are many other parts of India where it has happened already. Like there is a notion of what is standard Bengali. There is a notion of what is standard Hindi. Malayalam and Marathi are still in the process, not happened yet, but it's happening. Once you have school textbooks centrally printed and a newspaper industry, you will start finding that it picks up on what, and it doesn't do any blending. It doesn't say, I like this from Solapur, I like this from Pune, this from Nagpur will go. No, it will choose one. And it normally, I think it's Pune, isn't it?
Hello, ma'am. I am also from Maharashtra. My question is that speaking about standardization, Dalit thinkers like Chandraban Prasad have said that in the process of standardization, Dalits have been exploited by all modern languages, modern Indian languages. So we should go to English instead. So what is your take on that?
English is the Mandarin language, right? The British set it up for the ICS. But there was one problem, different between Mandarin in India and Mandarin in Chinese. Mandarin Chinese was a Chinese language. This is not an Indian language. And it has another problem. For me, the biggest problem of English in India is how many people it excludes. It's not going to include them. It is designed to not include them. We have a lot of very bright people. Everybody who comes to set up your Wi-Fi and to organize electronics in your life is somebody you do not speak to in English. These are bright people and they have not had an opportunity. So what are we, when I see Iran attack Israel and send hypersonic missiles at them, and I realize we put a spacecraft on the moon, but we're not, we don't want to fight, and really, I'm glad we're not, but we are not in that league of countries like China, Russia, Iran, who are making a difference in the world, who has the world sitting up and worrying. And what is the difference? In Iran, all you see here is women in hijabs. But do you know that if we went to a scientific conference, 1/3 of the presenters, if not half, would be women, those same women. The people who are programming the missiles and so that are going and hitting Israel. Israel is not the only country in the Middle East that has women in huge numbers, and not just at the poor. The poor are in through the educational system, no longer just setting up your Wi-Fi. They are doing everything. So they're firing on all cylinders. So that's my problem with English. If we could be like the Philippines or South Africa, with all of us just gapmaroing in Hindi, bagal mein na, to mind mat karna, to we just थोड़ा सा jokes marenge Hindi mein. No, we can't be like that. Too many people, too many bright people, people educated otherwise, are not able to participate. That is what damns English here. If English didn't do that, I might wonder, maybe it could happen. In the Caribbean, it can happen. We can get past our creoles and speaking. It cannot happen here. Partly because India designed itself as a country that had an elite language, which was to keep the others out. See, if you have a kid who's halfway intelligent, not very, you want them to have an advantage over a poor child who's very intelligent, doesn't have English. Who's going to get the job? And that's the way this present world is designed, that the kid who knows English will get the higher level job, but not be able to do as much in futuristic terms as the brighter kid who's struggling stupidly with, why does he have to struggle with English? A lot of IIT boys, you lend them a paper to read technical stuff. They're writing dictionary definitions in the margin. They cannot take English for granted the way an Iranian can take a paper in Farsi, or a Chinese can take a paper in Mandarin. So that is my problem with English here.
Pranam ma'am. My name is Arpit, and my question is from Bhojpuri side. I belong to a Bhojpuri region. So it is a common expression that Bhojpuri is a dialect of Hindi. And for what are the criterias on its base that a means of communication can be considered language?
Bhojpuri is a very different example from the Rajasthani languages and Braj and Awadhi. Bhojpuri is a language that was captured and colonized by Hindi space across the confluence and that area. Bhojpuri has a number of, if you were to line it up, I've done it. I have a photograph I made of all these languages as a grid. Bhojpuri, Maithili, Bengali, Odia, Assamese, Santal. I put the grid. There is no difference, except Santal is slightly more complicated. It has a little extra detail, but these are identical. So you do not line up with Hindi, you line up with the languages of the East. So our problem is that is why when you know Bhojpuri, unless you've learned Hindi in school from a young age, you don't know whether a dog is, whether this is masculine or feminine. You really have to think. I go on and Google search words, is this in feminine or masculine in Hindi, just like a Bengali. You know very well you don't go on saying Dugo gud ki pani. You don't say that in Hindi. And you don't say Dugo at all. It's easy, you just delete a word. But whenever you have to know that this man ne khana khaya, hum khana khaili. Correct? We are just like Bengali. So the inner structure of Bengali shows its heritage, which is in the East. But a lot of the words are increasingly they are coming In fact, gender is even sneaking into Bhojpuri in the verbs, which in my day was not there. Look, we left India 150 years ago, and Bhojpuri, believe me, did not have any gender at all. But things have changed because you are on the cusp, you're on the edge of the Hindi zone. But why is Bhojpuri a dialect and not a language? It's a definition which has nothing to do with language. It has to do with political power and economic power. And if the Bhojpuri region is not a center of either administration or tech work, there's no Indian language which is a center of tech work. So there's no reason why you would throw your life away and only speak Tamil because you go to Chennai and you will do tech. No, that does not happen. But all that we have is commercial power, political power. And that does not exist, unfortunately, in the Bhojpuri region. So it's nothing to do with language.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Atharv Raj. Atharv Raj. Okay. Now my question is that why is English not considered as scientific language, despite being its many words are derived from Sanskrit, like trigonometry became trigonometry, or math become mother. Why is it not considered scientific language?
It's not come from Sanskrit. In English?
Yes, ma'am.
No, it's come from Latin, which is similar to Sanskrit.
Okay.
But where it's come from is not the thing. You like to, I mean, supposing I suddenly needed words to talk about a lot of things in India, which in Shuddh Hindi, you're beginning to find, how do you say Indus Valley civilization? It's nice to know there's a way to say it. But it's just that these things you have to come from somewhere. And Sindhu Ghati Sabhyata. Okay, we have it. It's nice to know. But if we didn't have it, we would have something else because the concept is there. Trigonometry in English is probably come from Arabic, the concept, no? But that's not what matters now. At the moment now, knowing that you had an illustrious grandfather does not help whether you don't have a job, right? The question is, what are we going to do age? And it doesn't matter where we take our nouns from. We will take nouns. Urdu will take them all from Shuddh Hindi. They will do it. And it's no problem. We could take it from English. A number of kids do. In fact, I would like to write into Hindi AI, if I did, that there's an option for the kids who never got to study these things, prefer Hindi but don't understand the technical words because they were forced to learn science in English. So they would like to read Hindi, but not with Shuddh Hindi technical words. And we should have an option for that because you know that there's something that's being done in India that A sections of municipal schools learn in English. So the kids have the vocabulary in English and they don't understand, they're not happy with the language in other ways. We really messed it up. But don't worry about the past. The past, it was there. What are we going to do now? And if we are moving towards Hindi type translation into Hindi, translation into Marathi, translation to Kannada, all of these, what will be the norms of how these words are translated? How will they be received? The translators will change according to how people react. So think of the future more than the past.
Yeah, so in my school, I was in something called a semi-English medium. So science and maths were taught in English, history and social sciences and everything was in Marathi. And when I came to engineering college, I wanted to go to US. I came to know I don't know English. I had to literally relearn everything properly because I could only read and write. I could not speak, I could not understand the spoken English very well. That was another level of the change I had to undergo to learn how to speak and everything.
But just imagine a world where they have to learn your language because it's now multipolar and the US is sinking, hello, and suddenly Asia is rising. Maybe we'll have a different solution, not that we learn English. And by the way, the Chinese learn English just as you learned English. When you've had enough time at summit camp with your own language, learning English is very easy. If you need to know it. May not.
Just because it's based on the same thing which we're discussing right now. So government has proposed in the new education policy the three language system. Now learning a language at a school age must come at a trade-off of not learning some other things. In India, the educational outcomes are already abysmal and they're very bad. We are trying to improve it. Do you think at this point of time, learning three languages for a student who are barely able to do second grade maths problem while being in a fifth grade is a good thing for a country like India? But we also need something to unite people, and government thinks three language model is going to be something helpful in that. So as a linguist, what do you think? Is it too cognitive hard work for a student, or is it a necessary step?
Especially since you people are going to be IAS officers, there is a terrible belief among government people that any problem that's there in the nation, push it onto the kids in the schooling system. Hello, the poor kids have so much to do. Why are they going now? We're going to teach them about ecology. We are going to teach them about saving the planet. They are going to do this, that, and they will learn about cows, and they will learn about three languages. The thing is, and if you learn Sanskrit, and I tell all my students, don't. Because first thing I will make you do is forget everything you learn because it's mostly wrong about Sanskrit, and do proper academic Sanskrit, not just reciting shlokas. But there is a problem that the people who have tried to address the issue of language in India haven't thought about what it is. Why should a person in Bangalore know a third language if maybe he's not going to travel? If he's going to travel, he will learn it anyway. My daughter had three languages in her school. She did learn Tamil. My husband insisted, and then she did go and work there for a year, and she was very happy about it. But it becomes like a plaything. It's just abstract. It's like you discover if you go to join the IFS and you study French, one place you will never be posted is France. Why will you learn it? And if you went there, you would learn it in no time. Because languages are not an intellectual thing. All the families who have children who are mentally challenged, if they are bilingual, the kids will be too. So language is just not a big issue. I think that, and also Indians don't go moving every year to a different part of India. You make one big move in your life, or two maximum. That's not a problem. The problem, however, is once you know English, think of Indian languages as a pyramid. You have English up here. It's a one-way flow. Poor people learn laterally. If you're Assamese going to Kerala as a migrant, you will pick up Malayalam in no time. If you're an English speaker going to there, you will not. So there's an interesting direction of flow about language, which all of these are technical issues in linguistics that the government should take note of when they try to propose something that's not going to work and will eat up. Also, who's going to teach it? Hello? I would love to learn a lot of these things. So you shout about how I should learn Tamil. Well, who's teaching me? Where is it offered? Where is it? We should be learning Chinese. Hello, where are the courses? So we're not thinking, you just pass a resolution. We will teach a third language. The teacher can't even teach two properly, and you want a third. It's not going to happen. So don't go on. It's like saying very good theory, but the implementation, no, it can't be implemented. It's a bad theory.
Okay. So that's it for today. So we'll wrap it up now. And thank you so much for coming. And thank you, ma'am, for coming. Thank you so much.
It's been fantastic. Can you imagine? I don't get to talk about these things. Imagine if I went to a party and wanted to talk like this. I'd be thrown out. This has been better than a party. That was an interesting thing, that this is something in between chatter and writing. And we've been doing something that has not been recognized as a bona fide level of language, which is talking in this context.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.